Good afternoon. Welcome back to the B&H virtual event space. Now, I know you guys tuned in to a podcast breakdown today with Avid and Devvon Terrell, but you are really getting so much more. Looking at Devvon's setups, as you guys are going to see in a minute, you're going to just get, whether you're a streamer, a podcaster, YouTuber, no matter what you want to do, he's got everything. It's the complete package. So I want to thank Avid for hosting today's event and welcome Andrew Reilly from Avid and the man of the hour, Devvon Terrell. What's going on, guys?
Hey, what's going on,
Look, you guys, I'm super hyped for this. We did a test call the other day, and I already know I'm going to be spending money today. Devvon's taking us through his studio. So I will encourage you guys to get any questions you guys have in. He's really here to help you guys out. Andrew is the man behind the scenes. He's going to be answering any tech questions you guys have on any of the products that we're going to see. And we'll get some links dropped to those for you guys to click on as well. No matter where you're joining us from, YouTube, Vimeo, live stream, the B&H Event Space website. Feel free to get those questions in. But Devvon, what's going on, man? I'm going to kick it to you. Take us around the studio.
Yeah, of course. And I'm excited to actually show everybody around. And the reason why is because this is years of process of elimination, right? Like basically we were always looking for something that was an all-in-one workhorse that could do everything. And when I say everything, I mean even from music to podcasting to literally this Zoom that we're doing right now. For instance, right now what you're hearing is process audio coming out of Pro Tools into the Mbox Studio and cleanly to you. And that's awesome. Right now, if I wanted to, I could throw auto-tune on my voice and you would hear that audio process clean just what you're hearing. Now, I use it for music, but another thing that I use it for is podcasting. And that's where I really feel like for my workflow, as far as my room is concerned, where it just knocks it out the park. So for instance, let me show you this. Now I can hit this camera and I'm over here and you can see this angle. You can see my whole studio for the most part. And it was easy, but the audio's still working. Everything's still fine. I can also come up here and say, hi. And basically I have another angle where someone else could be presenting or doing anything and switch right on the fly, super easy. Once again, audio is clean, audio is still shining through. Then for my podcasting stuff, basically I would just have a person sitting here chilling out, kind of recording the podcast. And the beautiful thing about it is all of these microphones are connected to the Mbox Studio. So everyone's audio would be seamlessly being recorded, going right into this Pro Tools session, and you would hear it clean, super easy, super simple. Basically, it's just one output coming out of that Mbox, going right into this Pro Tools session and going right to you on Zoom. But it's easy. We're kind of podcasting right now, which is kind of awesome. Let's keep this going. So something else that I really, really want to point out is the fact that I can literally do anything with the Mbox Studio. For instance, say for instance, a guest calls in, or I just want to play something for people just while the podcast is going. Now, a lot of times what we have to do is we got to plug in an aux and try to figure out how we're going to get it into the session, but not with the Mbox Studio. Check this out. No wires. And I can still talk over it. That is an amazing feature. And the reason why that feature is so powerful is because now, say for instance, even when you're reference mixing or trying to hear your mix or something like that on other sound sources, you can literally Bluetooth out the output of the Mbox Studio to any speaker that you want. So instead of me having to bounce that record, go to the car or go to that other speaker to kind of reference, now I could just literally play the audio through any sound source I want from a Bluetooth device. And on the input side, I can record my cell phone or record any Bluetooth device directly into the Mbox Studio. It's changed everything for me. It's really made my studio an all-encompassing, all-in-one kind of workhorse as far as being able just to create content in general. So let's actually take a look at the actual Mbox Studio. So this is the box, and it's super simple. One side you have here is the inputs. Right side here is the outputs. What's great is it's just easy. Basically, you have your common things like the pad. You can change the input to whatever type you have, from mic, line, or instrument level. Obviously, you got your 48 volts. You got your Bluetooth button, which this is an input stage. So basically, I could just Bluetooth my phone or whatever source I want to the Mbox right on this side. And then you have a link. And what that link does is it helps to say for instance, you have a stereo signal that you have coming in. You can literally link channels 1 and 2 together and control them as one if you wanted to. It's super easy to do. You can also do that for the other side, which is the output side, and do the exact same thing when you hit link or Bluetooth out. You can mono it. You can have a talk back right there, dim, mute, etc. You even have 2 sets of speakers that you can go back and forth between with the main and the alts. So you can have your main speakers, but you can also hook up your sub if you wanted to as well. You got some digital connections like SPDIF and all kinds of things like that, as well as your Bluetooth output. You can literally control the output of the Bluetooth separately. I have 2 headphone jacks, which the great thing about the headphone jack is the fact that I literally just hook up the headphone jack to my Behringer headphone amp, and now all of those seats and positions that you see right there can get sound. I'm literally connecting an entire podcast studio through the entire Mbox Studio, and it sounds great. I don't want to overlook that part. The funny thing about it is I know that these preamps are the same preamps that are in the Carbon interface from Avid. So you're getting these super pristine, high quality preamps right inside this box, along with effects returns and sends and things of that nature. So even my outboard gear, I could connect to this actual piece in amazing conversion and amazing quality. So in summary, as far as why I chose the Mbox Studio, it just did everything I needed. You know, if I wanted to go travel and do a serious recording, I can. When I bring this thing back into my studio or just record on the road or do other things with like major projects, when I come back into my regular studio with my other stuff, I don't feel like I lost anything. I feel like I captured everything well and it's clean. And for the price point that it is, it's ridiculous. I'm getting 4 preamps, 4 line inputs. I'm getting a ton of ins and outs, and I'm still getting a piece that is feeling like it's consumer, but is super pro to me because I have things like effects, sends, and returns, and can hook up outboard gear, which is super unorthodox, I feel like, for something at this price point where I can literally just have effects, returns, and sends and hook up my knee portico bus or my audio escape compressor and things of that nature. So that's pretty much why I chose it. And the very last thing I'm going to show you is the actual session that we're running to do this whole thing. So let's take a seat right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. So we're going to click this, boom, over to this camera. And here we are. So literally, this is the session that you're hearing right now. Basically, the way I have it is mic 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The Bluetooth, I even have its own channel for. So literally in the middle of this whole session, I can literally turn this up and down and kind of manipulate the sound. So if I play the song, check this out. So you can see that music is coming in right here, just on the track, like a regular song. And what I can do is I can say, turn it down. And that's turning down in your mix through Zoom. You know, it's really, really easy to use it that way because it's so integrated with the Mbox. So I can literally mute this. I can literally press record, and this entire session will be recorded right now. And we're recording. This is being recorded, and I'm catching pristine audio, separate tracks with the music playing in the background. Okay. And we're done with that song. And that's why I love it so much. Now, one last thing, I know I said the last thing before, I have to show you, is the actual like Mbox control app and how I have it set up and wired. Now, I know a lot of us look at the digital mixers and we feel like it's a bit daunting. I love this one. Let me tell you why I love this one. Long story short, all I pay attention to is my hardware outputs, right? And when I look at my hardware outputs, I say, okay, these are my main speakers. In this app, it says, hey, what do you want to hear in the main speakers? Every time I click a different output source, you can see that the faders and things of that nature change, the routing, everything change. All it's saying is, and this is easy to wrap my head around, is in the main output, meaning the speakers, I want to hear the raw version of mic 1 or mic 2 or mic 3 or mic 4, or maybe I don't want to hear any of the actual direct input, but I just want to hear the playback of Pro Tools from itself. Well, I'll go right here to software inputs and I turn up 1 and 2. Watch this. If I turn this down, bye. And if I turn it back up, now I'm just hearing the sound from Pro Tools. But say, for instance, I say to myself, no, I want to hear the direct signal instead. I'll turn this down. And this is just the direct signal, no processing at all. You're kind of hearing that output. It's low, I know. So it's really easy for me to create these types of mixes out of the actual Mbox Studio. And I can choose, depending on the output source, what I want that to actually get. So if I don't want Bluetooth to actually come out my main speakers, think about it. I could just come over to here and say, don't come out my main speaker. Or I could just turn down and just not use the Pro Tools playback at all. So I can create a bunch of different variations. I can manipulate the audio in any way I want. And I can work on the fly. Not to mention, there's also EQs, compressors, and everything built into the actual digital mixer, where I can have some processing before it even hits Pro Tools and things of that nature, which is cool too. So all in all, and just to kind of summarize everything, I love it. It's a workhorse. It does everything I needed to do. It works in my studio so well. It sounds amazing and has all the functionalities of what I want out of an interface, out of a content creation, Zoom session, music, and the whole nine. I didn't expect it to be this used in my actual studio, but it's changed everything for me. And that's why I love the Mbox Studio. And that's why I'm even doing this. I really wanted people to know more about it because I just feel like it's flying under the radar with some people. And when I have to explain it to people and when I break it down as how I use it, it always just blows people's minds. So I hope that you see the value in it. And I hope that you can figure out how to use it in your own home recordings, studios, podcasts, just everything audio wise. And that's it.
I want to learn how to use it. Now I told you I was going to end up spending money. I'm going to be sitting the rest of the day on the internet looking to ball this up. Now, Devvon, let's go back to before, because what a lot of people might not know, that's a home studio.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people, it's like they're at a desk, they're at their kitchen table with a laptop webcam, and you have like, where did you start studio wise? Can you talk about your transition from a commercial studio to a home studio environment?
Yeah, so I had a commercial studio. It was called the HMD Studio. And long story short, I am also part owner in 2 other studios that are still up and running in Brooklyn. And basically, the HMD Studio one was really my personal one. Of course, we had clients and stuff. But eventually, I started to realize, especially when I got the Mbox, I said, wow, I can really just have this in my house. Like, I really don't need the commercial space anymore. I can really just have this in my home. And just have all the preamps and all the bells and whistles that I have in my commercial space. So I wound up just transitioning from my actual commercial space to my home, and it's been seamless. My quality didn't go down, it just stayed the same, but now I'm just paying less, you know what I mean? As far as like paying for rent and stuff like that is concerned. So it's really turned my home into just a all-in-one just workhorse for content creation and stuff like that.
That's awesome. And we talked about how seamless it is. Now, what is it, without going into the software, just the hardware itself, the Mbox Studio, what is the learning curve like? If someone just pops up and they're like, hey, I've never worked with any audio interface. This looks like the one, I want to try it out. What's the learning curve for a beginner?
I'd say when I first got the Mbox, I say within 3 days, I was good to go. I just needed to collect myself as far as where things were, but it was so easy. Like, it just was obvious, if that makes any sense. Because think about it. When you look at the piece, and I can show you it, you can obviously see like the left side is the input section, the right side is the output section. As soon as I tell you that, you kind of already get the vibe of just what everything is. Literally, if you press the rotary knobs, you start to change your inputs. You can, obviously, the right side is the output knob, the left side is the input knob, and it just made sense. So when I first picked up the piece, it was just it just made sense. Like, I can't even really get into how much sense it just made when I first saw it. And then with the Mbox Control app, it was really easy to manipulate once I got the hang of it. I understood like, oh, this output is telling me this is all the routing for that output, and this is all the routing for that output. And so I just started to manipulate it and find it. It was pretty easy, I'll be honest with you, compared to other stuff. I've had some other stuff, believe you me. But it was fairly easy to set this thing up. If you were from, at least have some knowledge of audio and you dealt with interfaces, you're gonna fall right into this one pretty easy.
I was gonna say, just looking at it, normally it's like when we think mixers, we think of like the picture of the professional recording studio, and you're like, how does anybody know what 6,000 levers and dials and all these buttons do? But it's pretty simple. The layout looks super clean.
Yeah, it's super clean. If you look at it, just obviously it says input, it says 48 volts, it says Bluetooth, it says link, it says pad. Like, it's all common words that we use, and it's not like some interfaces what happens is you have to do all of that stuff within the app. So there's those interfaces that don't have anything on them, and you kind of just have to do everything digitally. But this, no, everything is right there, plain for you to see, and it's easy to manipulate. And that's what I like, because it's kind of hard or kind of clunky a lot of times when I need to go to the app and just turn on 48 volts. Like, I don't want to have to go to the app just to turn on 48. You know what I mean? Like, little things like that are just makes it so much easier. I just hit mic one, boom, 48 volts, 48 volts, and just turn everything on. So it's a little easier just having everything right in the front of the actual machine.
Now, Andrew, I want to bring you in for a second because, you know, being represented from Avid, is this all is I mean, is Devvon hitting all the points when you guys were designing this and when you guys are looking at what is needed versus what's not needed to give professionals something that is a little bit more on the consumer side, and for the consumers, it gets them a little bit more up into the prosumer side of things?
Yeah, what's really interesting about Mbox just in general, I mean, this is now the fourth generation of an Mbox. The original Mbox came out in like the early 2000s, and was a hit specifically because of the quality that it brought to a lower price point. Kind of Mbox kind of shepherded in this generation of like at-home production. So we wanted to harken back to that, you know, play on Mbox, but offer modern features to, you know, what you're looking for as a, again, musician, a podcaster, even, you know, live, you know, taking this to a concert or something and recording your band. It started its life actually. We borrowed some of the circuitry from the 11 rack USB interface. Like when we were initially talking about bringing back an Mbox, it was really going to be a guitar player centric interface. So there's direct inputs on the front that have all of the same impedance switching for guitars and basses and you know, keyboards and that type of thing. All of the mic inputs have variable impedance as well, so you can hook in your low output dynamics or ribbon microphones or that type of thing. There's reamp outing out on the front panel as well as the back panel with ground lifts and everything for using effects pedals. So it was originally designed to be like a guitar player's interface. But as we started designing for it, it was like, wow, a lot of these features and routing and you know, the use of the control app really lends itself well to other applications as well. So it's kind of a sleeper for sure. We didn't really market it when it was launched for podcast, but you look at the amount of microphone inputs that you might need, plus the ability to create custom headphone outputs. So each of those, as Devvon was switching through the output section in the control app, all of those different color-coded outputs can have their own dedicated mix. It's a 21 input by 22 output interface. So even all of the digital outputs, if you wanted to hook up to an 8-channel headphone mixer and go out to, you know, like we're doing right now, go out to a live stream in various areas, go out to a separate room in your studio, go out to a whole bunch of talent. I mean, it's just a really flexible and versatile interface that, yeah, it can do like guitar and like hardcore music application stuff really well. It's got a built-in guitar tuner. There's just so much that it can do. But then on the other side, it's got DSP built in for doing EQ. It's got reverb and delay built into the DSP engine to be able to do a bunch of stuff live really well. You can actually disconnect it from your computer altogether and use the EQ and effects as a live mixer plugged into a speaker at a coffee shop or a small venue. So Devvon mentioned that the preamps are in our Carbon interface. They're also the same preamps that are in our S6L family of live consoles that are out touring the world in arenas. So there's that heritage of like really high quality sonics, as well as the just like usability and flexibility of what you would expect from like a really versatile USB interface. So there's a lot to unpack there. But I think in terms of getting up to speed with it, what I really enjoy about it is there is a button for just about everything. You aren't needing to dive into a bunch of menus to figure out how it works, or to figure out how to, there's actually 4 usable programmable user programmable buttons on the front as well, that if there is something that's hidden in the menu, you can bring it out and, you know, assign those common commands that you might need from within the app to a button. So if you're in a performance or you're in a, you know, a stream or something, and you need to adjust your mix, you don't have to get out of whatever application you're in just to, you know, tweak a level or adjust your input section. So there's a lot going on here, and, you know, really happy to you know, share some of the different applications that we were going after.
Well, yeah, it's like it goes back to when we first started this, and we said we were going to be getting more than podcasting. If you guys don't know of Devvon's extensive catalog, I mean, you do it all, man. It's music production, podcasting. You're, I would say, jack of all trades. You're a master of all trades. I've seen all your stuff, and you're just wonderful at everything you do. So can we dive into, because a lot of times we get, podcasting is podcasting, right? Mic input, you might have some effects here and there. Music production is where you might have some of the more simple interfaces out there that are good for podcasting, but that's pretty much it. Once you get into music production, there's a hard line drawn in the sand. Can you talk a little bit about the music production side, Devvon, and how the Mbox works into your workflow?
Yeah, for sure. So, like I said, you know, I have a lot of outboard gear for the most part. And one thing about having outboard gear is that obviously I need sends and returns, right? Like I need that in order to break in to my outboard gear and stuff like that. So when I seen that the piece had that, I felt like at that price point, that was very strange for me to see that something at that price point had that capability. So it kind of future-proofed me, right? Whereas if I was a up and coming production, you know, producer or singer or songwriter and stuff like that, and say for instance, I did want to grow, right? If you had more of a like a consumer kind of interface, it would be kind of tough to say, well, now I have an audio compressor, or now I have a master bus processor. It's like, well, how would you connect that? You know what I mean? It's like you would have to literally upgrade your interface or change things. But with this, I don't have to go anywhere. I'm super future proof for that. So with music production, I'm still able to use all my bells and whistles and still have all of my outboard and stuff like that with it. I mean, for us to be talking about a piece at this price point and talking about outboard gear, like it's just kind of unheard of, you know, like usually it's just a couple mic inputs, line inputs. You just record, you know what I mean? It's not like you're like having like a console that you can mix on. Like I can mix with this, you know? So, yeah, from a music production standpoint, it's helped a lot. It's helped a lot with reference mixing as well. That Bluetooth feature is super underrated. I know people are like, whatever, but you got to understand when I'm reference mixing, you know, I'm trying to hear my stuff on anything, you know, if my little crappy speaker, I want to hear it, I don't have to bounce it anymore. It saves time, you know what I mean? And things of that nature. So I can literally have the Mbox going out to my speakers in my backyard. You know what I mean? It just, you know, I could do so much live performances. It makes the Zoom stuff easy. So from a music production standpoint, it just does everything I need. The preamps are phenomenal, right? I'm getting these freaking high quality preamps that are in super expensive pieces that obviously Avid has. And the converters are great too, which I want to make sure I say too. The converters are great too. I've tested those just to hear it. But yeah, it's great. If I need to record a huge band, I can. You know, that functionality is there. But if I just need to cut a single vocal, I can, you know, but I have that option to do it all from the music production side.
I love that the term future proof, where I think not enough people think ahead. They think about only what I need right now or what I have the budget for right now. And it's not, I'm going to use myself as an example because I've thrown money away. I throw money away constantly. It's like, get this now. I don't future proof. And then what do I end up with? I end up with a nice piece of rarely used gear sitting on the shelf because it didn't do what I needed to do. Or I didn't think I was going to learn something so fast and progress past the capabilities of what I'm doing. So what are some of those? I mean, you've talked about some of these features that I would consider more nuances, stuff that you'll find in more professional level gear that people might not expect to have something at this price point. But as far as features or different things that the Mbox offers that you didn't think you would get in something at this price point, can you dive a little bit more into some of those, or something that people you find would be very useful to people that they wouldn't necessarily know they would need?
Yeah. One thing that's strange, and you know, Andrew brought up, was the tuner. That threw me off heavily. Like I've never had a piece that when I see the button tune, I was like, what? Like I was just so confused by that. I was like, there's an actual tuner on it, and literally you press it and it reads there's a microphone that's actually on the piece. You know, it just little things like that. The fact that I have a talkback, you know, I just felt like at this price point, I wasn't expecting to have all of those options, because a lot of people got to understand this. Usually when you buy an interface, what you'll need to purchase is a monitor station or something to control all of your signal, right? Coming in and out from your speakers and stuff like that. So it cut that price or cut that completely out, that I didn't have to buy that too, because now I'm controlling my volume, my inputs and everything right on the piece. Usually, even with my high-end piece that I have here on the other side, literally I have to buy a monitor station to literally control those outputs. But on this little piece at this price point, it's built in, you know what I mean? And that's worth, to me, that's worth $500 on top of what it is, just because now I don't have to buy like a Personas monitor station or a big knob, you know what I mean? Or one of those kind of things to control my inputs and outputs. So everything was right there, just dead on the front. And I just didn't need to buy anything. Like I bought this and I didn't need to buy anything else. Like I'm done, you know what I mean? As far as everything is concerned. Literally right now, I'm hearing you guys off of my speakers to my right-hand side with me just moving the knob on the actual output. So I can literally turn you guys up in my speakers right there. I can turn my mic up right now, right here. It's just right there. Everything is controlled. All my levels are good and I can manipulate it at any time. So that feature is awesome. Obviously the Bluetooth thing, I've talked about that ad nauseum, right? The other thing is the Mbox control button, which is really cool when I first seen it, because basically what it allows me to do is it allows me, and I'll point to it right here. This is the Mbox control button. And when I press that button, what it does is it literally brings up the control app in the actual computer. So instead of going and searching for it, little nuanced things like that, instead of going to search for it, I can literally just press that button. It brings up the Mbox control on and up and just right there, which I just thought that was such a cool little tiny thing that was there. Other thing is the programmable, the mappable buttons. That is a wild thing to have, because now, and I'll share my screen right quick, what the programmable buttons let me do is it allows me to basically map things that I want to the Mbox inside the Mbox control. So I can create these buttons, right, that literally, and I'll stop sharing so you can see the thing. Literally, if I map it to these, it'll engage whatever I map it to as far as what the functions are. So now we're speeding up my workflow, and I've never had an interface do that. You know what I mean? Like if you, maybe there's some out there, but I don't know a couple off my hand that literally I can map certain buttons to do specific functions, like a MIDI control. You know what I mean? Like that's wild. Like that's crazy. So to me, I just think this thing just does so many things. You know, I could go on for days about it, and I learn things about it all the time too. You know, I'm not even using the full functions of it for the most part, you know, but I know that it probably can do that, or I'm future-proof, you know what I mean, in that regard, where it's like, I know I can probably have some crazy routing if I need to happen in the Mbox and stuff like that. So yeah, this thing just works.
I mean, it is. It's all the little things. And I'm going to take this time to remind everybody, if you do have any questions, whether it's on gear, the technical side of things, podcasting, streaming, recording music, this is your time. You have Devvon here. He's not going to be here all day. So get those questions in if you guys have them. Devvon, what's the one thing for people who are getting started? What do you see the biggest mountain or hill that people need to climb to get in, rather than just doing it? I mean, obviously just doing it. I think when we talked the other day, this came up, you have to just do it. You're never, you can't just sit there. You can't say, I don't have this, I don't have that. We have the gear. We have the gear at price points for everybody. But what do you see people getting hung up on as far as from a technical side of things with production?
I think it's workflow, right? I think that there's a reason why some people are just so attracted to certain DAWs, right? And you have to figure out what works best for your brain. So I think the same rules apply when it comes to an interface, right? Where if you're familiar with SSL consoles or a certain type of workflow, then you need something to kind of complement that way that you learn and how you operate. So for me, I just think that when you're trying to figure things out, take your time, see what works for you, and try to figure out what you're trying to accomplish, right? So I always tell people, ask yourself the question before you make any move, before you put on an EQ, a compressor, or anything. I always say, ask yourself, why are you doing that? You know what I mean? I think a lot of us get really caught up in, well, I know that I'm going to EQ first, then compress or do this. It's like, yeah, but why? Ask yourself, every move you make in audio, everything you do, everything you purchase, ask yourself why. So when I look at the inbox and stuff like that, I say to myself, okay, well, why, right? Like, why would you jump to this and why would you use this? If you're a person that is a producer or singer-songwriter and you're just looking to get right in to the point where you're trying to learn and figure things out, everything is there. You can grow into it. You know what I mean? So that's why I say, as far as anybody trying to jump into it, try to get something that's all encompassing. Try to get something that does it all and learn that piece. Because I guarantee you, if you learn this piece, you will understand how interfaces just work. You know what I mean? In that regard. So try to get something that is all around is what I would suggest to people. Get something that's all around and learn from there and grow into whatever you kind of like get and stuff like that. Because you got to learn no matter what. There's a learning curve no matter what.
Definitely. I think you read my mind on the workflow thing, because I think no matter what, I mean, whether it's you're doing audio streaming, video, whatever it is, it's that workflow. It's, you know, if I go steps 1 through 3 and I don't, you know, I miss something, did I screw myself? Or, you know, what order is going to make it easier, you know? And then sometimes it's like, well, do I take somebody else's workflow or do I learn and learn my own way? Now, you said with Pro Tools, you know, we're getting already processed audio. From what you're recording, are you recording raw audio? Are you recording the processed? Are you recording both? How does that work as far as your workflow? Because you obviously have your system down. If I go in, is it kind of like, okay, am I recording processed audio? Am I recording not processed audio? What am I getting as somebody who doesn't have it all figured out?
Right. Got you. So what you could do is this, right? And I'll share my screen. So if you're new to it and you're trying to figure out, okay, you're printing to something, right? So you're probably printing to Pro Tools, right? If you're just recording a podcast or just getting started or whatever you're doing, you're probably printing to Pro Tools or whatever. Think about it like this. When it comes to a musician, right? If I'm an engineer, you want to hear yourself processed, right? You want to hear a little bit of compression, a little EQ. You want to hear that stuff, right? So the beautiful thing about what Andrew actually brought up was you can create alternate mixes, right? So I could say, okay, well, this artist happens to like the sound of their voice raw. They want to hear the direct recording, no compression, no EQ. Well, understand I have 2 headphone outs right here. I can literally say this headphone, and let me change the name of it. I'll call this engineer phones. And then I can call this one artist phones, right? So now I have the engineer headphones, which is me, right? I want to hear the process signal, but the artist says, I want to hear the raw signal. Well, guess what? What I can do is I can click right over here to the engineer headphones and I can turn off all the hardware inputs, meaning the raw signal. All of these hardware inputs up here are the raw signal. That's what's coming in. I want to hear that directly. That's what that is up top. If you want to hear the process signal, engineer headphones, right? All I have to do is go to the software inputs right here, which is basically playing back from Pro Tools, and turn it up, as you can see right here. Now for the artist, I would go over to the artist, and the artist wants to hear the raw vocal, right? So since this is the playback from Pro Tools, I'll say, okay, well, turn this down. Gone. Now the artist can hear nothing. And now this is up, and now they're hearing the raw sound coming out of their vocal, if I do it that way. So if you're trying to basically get started with it and you're trying to record, you can literally set up those kinds of mixes if you want process audio or if you want raw audio. It's totally and utterly up to you. And then also realize that if you come over to the Pro Tools, technically, if I just turn off all these plugins, you're getting raw audio. You know what I mean? So you don't even have to think about that at all, because it's either you want the raw sound, which just don't put nothing on, or you want the process sound to be heard, which you put it on and it'll play back that way as well. So it's really easy to get up and running with that, and kind of you don't even have to think about it. It's kind of just already happening in the background without you actually setting that type of stuff up, and that's it. So right now what I'm getting when I actually record, if I press record, I'm getting processed audio because I'm running through the plugins and stuff like that. But technically it's raw, because if I turn off the plugins, it's just the raw audio. So I'm kind of getting the best of both worlds. You know what I mean?
I love that. I'm about to, every time we go live now, I'm just going to call you up and be like, hey, can we just run through your
Just
let me
run it through
borrow the
gates. Dude, I got so much stuff on here, like, and they're all like really low latency stuff, but I got like gates, noise gates, some de-essing for harshness. Like I got like some,
Can
I
you
got real, like this
can
this
you
is
dive in?
depressing.
I'd love to hear you dive into that a little bit. Like what like I mean, when you're listening to stuff, right? You're listening
Right.
to me talk. Is it something where you know, does it have to do with someone's voice or what their audio environment is? What are you looking at? Or is there stuff that similar to like, okay, a lot of our audience is familiar with photo terms, right? So you know, okay, whenever I take a picture, I know I'm instantly gonna have to adjust some kind of contrast. It's gonna come out of the camera pretty flat. I know I'm gonna need to add some kind of little curve and adjustment to get the contrast there. What is it for audio that you're looking at when you know you're recording raw sound? What does every audio need if there is something?
For specifically just for raw sound, you're saying? Like, how do I
Yeah.
approach just recording raw sound and listening for that?
Yeah.
So for me, my biggest thing about raw sound is I'm trying to get away from any possibility of a noise floor, right? So that's why good preamps are so clutch, and that's why I use this for recording podcasts and stuff like that, because I'm going to add compression. I'm going to add a bunch of different things to it. So when I'm adding that compression, increasing that level, sometimes with cheaper interfaces, what you wind up doing is raising that noise floor, and so you start to hear that waterfall. Shh.
Mm.
So what I like to do is make sure that raw signal is healthy, right? Where it's away from that noise floor. It's a great preamps, so it's really, really quiet. And so when I start to compress and stuff like that, I get a strong, girthy, like heavy signal. And that's because the preamps are so good. So I'm always looking for really healthy preamps with really low noise floors, so that when I compress and process that audio, I'm not getting all that mess and that waterfall kind of happening and stuff like that, which is what you're hearing now, which is pretty clean and pristine. And I'm getting a really healthy signal, like really healthy signal.
So I'm guessing that's like, because I've been on my audio journey for longer than I'd like to admit, but it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, if you don't have that, you know, I have that little buzz, right, from not a clear preamp.
Right.
And then when you go in and what do you have to do? You want clean sound. So you go in and you take a sample of that recording before you started talking and you denoise it. And what does that do? It ultimately affects your good. It's like, wait, but my audio sounded good before. And now there's something, I don't know what it did, but it didn't just affect.
Yep.
So
It kind of hurts your quality when you
yeah.
start putting those kind of like denoisers and stuff. They have to kind of take some of the essence of what's there, you know, and that's what I'm trying to avoid. I'm not even trying to go into it with, okay, got to put a denoiser at off rip. You know what I mean? So clean preamps are very important, and I think that gets overlooked a bit when people buy audio interfaces. They just say, okay, here's an audio interface, but how are the preamps, you know? And that's something I paid attention to heavy with the Mbox, where I was like, why would they put those high quality preamps in this piece? How did they pull that off? You know, that was my biggest thing. And it's great for podcasting, because sometimes I get the person that's really quiet and doesn't know how to talk on a mic, and then I get the person that's like really up on it too. So I need really good preamps, you know what I mean? Because I have to make sure I'm capturing that, and just in case I need to boost, I want to make sure that it's not just giving me the waterfall, you know, and just so much noise and stuff like that. But also I want to make sure I can take that actual audio too, which is important.
Okay. Now,
Yeah, and I think something to
go
talk
for it.
about there, especially for podcasts. You see a lot of people, you know, they're getting started. They're like, well, I got to buy the gear that people are using for podcast, right? They see people like you, Derek, right? You've got a mic on a boom. Devvon, you got, you know, those mics. You see the mic, you're like, oh, I gotta buy an SM7, and they don't really consider like, okay, well, I know that mic can give you that louder than life broadcast, boomy, rich, you know, sound for the production. But then they don't realize that, oh, well, the topology of that microphone, it needs a lot of gain. It's very gain hungry. An RE20 is very gain hungry. All these dynamic mics that sound really cool for broadcast need a lot of gain. And when you're looking at an entry level preamp, you start turning that gain up, you get that hiss, you get the, you know, the background noise. And as you're turning up your microphone, if you're not right on top of that microphone, it's also turning up the sound of your room. So when you look at, I got acoustic panels behind me, Devon's got acoustic panels in there. So you know, you're considering all these different elements when you're just looking at getting the sound of somebody's voice to sound really good, especially for a podcast. That's all you're hearing. So and then you have to consider, well, where are people going to be consuming my podcast? Is it going to be on headphones? Is it going to be, you know, if it's an hour long, you know, long format podcast, where do people have time? They're on the train, they're driving in their car, you got road noise, you got people talking around you. It needs to be really intelligible. And so you're going through all that. I'm interested to hear what Devvon has to say about just processing for vocals, just because we're engineering for how our audience is going to hear it. I mean, most people nowadays are listening on something like an AirPod or some sort of wireless Bluetooth sort of situation. That's what I think is really cool about Mbox is with Bluetooth output, you can have them sync to your AirPods or whatever your favorite Bluetooth headphone is. Because wouldn't you want to mix on the thing that your audience is primarily going to be consuming your content on? Yeah, I've got some expensive speakers behind me. I'm sure Devon's got some really cool gear there as well, but our audience necessarily doesn't have a hi-fi playback system everywhere that they're going and consuming the content. So I think just considering gear as a way, workflow is one thing, getting the job done faster so that you can do more work, but also using the gear to inform the decisions and get the best quality content out to your audience is, I think, something that's really important, and something we tried to do with Mbox of giving you the flexibility to produce for all different types of work, but also to get the highest possible results with the investment into that gear too.
Definitely. Devvon, I'm going to give you a chance to dive into what Andrew was just talking about there, because that's huge. And I think that's something that not enough people pay attention to. There's no such thing as good audio. It's how is it being listened to that makes it, is it good audio for that format? So if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. What he's saying is so underrated. And I say it because he's right. When I'm mixing my audio, for instance, for my podcast or just music in general, I will go to those AirPods because I know in my heart that 80% of people are going to hear it in these little headphones and these little earbuds and stuff like that. And then I want to make sure that that experience is pleasing, right? So the funny thing about mixing audio for podcasting is other interfaces that I've used, it lacks clarity, lacks fidelity. It's for podcasting, right? So they automatically, for some reason, I don't know why podcasting interface just assume, well, we don't need the best preamps in the world. It's podcasting. Like that's kind of the thing, right? It's like, it's pod. We don't need nothing crazy, right? But the problem becomes when you're trying to create something for a listener to listen to for an elongated period of time, that if you have audio that is harsh or brittle or just not pleasing, not clear, you're going to lose those people. And that's something that I think podcasters are going to realize at some point where it's like, this sounds bad. You know what I mean? And it may be cool to listen to for 2 minutes, but an hour, things get a little wonky. But if I have a sound, if I have these preamps and stuff like that that are clear, crystal clear, sound like music, sound like I'm recording even a dynamic on a condenser, right? It feels like that. Then that is a little bit more pleasing to the ear. And I know I'm gonna hold and retain that person a lot more. I think we need to start paying attention to quality with podcasting, especially because I think that it gets overlooked and we kind of just think like, oh, it's just podcasting, it's just talking, but it still needs clarity and it still needs good preamps and stuff like that. So as far as what he's saying, as far as me being able to use the Bluetooth and listen to my playback on Bluetooth speakers and my AirPods, it just makes me make better and more informed decisions on what my listener is going to be actually listening to, as opposed to me bouncing an hour-long podcast, then going listening to it, then going back in and fixing it. It's like, no, Bluetooth, listening, and I'm mixing in my AirPods now. You know what I mean? So that type of thing is insane. That's insane. Like that. Let me tell you something. Of all the things that it had, that was the one thing that blew my mind the most. That simple little thing. And I was like, why is no one doing this? Like, why is no one like creating this type of thing? So yeah, it's super important just to have that type of functionality with the whole piece and stuff. So I take that serious with preamps and listening environments and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's everything. I mean, and it's, now that I think about it, I'm like, yeah, I'm sitting here, I'm like, I have studio monitors plugged in. Nobody's sitting around listening to whatever I'm putting out there on studio monitors. It's coming through a laptop speakers, like you said, AirPods. And I think that is something that's so overlooked and underrated as far as how you're producing. Now, if I could throw in another little follow-up question on this, let's get into decibels. And is there certain levels? Because I feel like that's another thing. Again, I'm going to relate it to the photo side of things, because I think it resonates with me and a lot of our viewers is, okay, you're looking at something on and you have a $4,000 36-inch monitor, but most people are going to be looking at it on a phone. So you have to like, okay, I got to send it to my phone. As far as recording levels, how do you, because it's like perfect example. I went out yesterday, 50th anniversary of hip hop show down Pier 17. The audio is just going to be anything. If you're closer than 50 yards to the monitors on the stage, it's like, man, the audio is crazy. And I'm like, well, what level do I have to be at? What kind of decibel crunch do I have to put on where I'm not crushing the sound? For what you're doing, music, and if it's different for music production or podcast, decibel level, and how do you make sure that you're getting the right levels?
So I'll be honest with you. I am very, and I always tell people, in audio, I don't like to use the words always and never, right? Like I don't like to be married to things. But one thing that I like, and this people are gonna be like, why? I like the number -10. And I just like -10 dB. And the reason why is when it comes to inputs, I'm talking inputs specifically, I like -10 because -10 dB for me personally has given me the opportunity to have healthy levels, to make less mistakes. I'm not recording as hot, thus I'm not getting distortion. I just like -10 dB on my inputs. It's far enough from the noise floor, but also far enough from the ceiling where if something happens or some moment inflection happens that I'm not distorting and stuff like that. So that's been my little tip. I'm not saying everybody should do that, like by all means. Some people say -6 is the magic number, blah, blah, blah. But if you have good preamps, you can do that type of thing. You know what I mean? So input wise, -10 dB is my little number, like -10 dB. That's my little number right there.
All right.
Yeah, and I think to equate that to the photography world, right? You have the same kind of numbers that you're looking for, and there's different ways to get to your optimal exposure. Your starting point is your aperture, and then you've got your shutter speed after that, and then in post you have ISO, you've got digital gain, and the same kind of thing applies to audio as well, right? Your preamp is, well, your microphone choice is your first step, just like your lens choice is your first step, depending on what type of environment you're in. If you're in the dark, you're shooting a concert outside at night or something, you need a really fast lens, you're going to pick something with something that can go really wide on the aperture side. So like if you choose the tool that you need for the application. So like the first step, choosing the right microphone. Then it's using a really versatile microphone preamp, like what Devvon's saying on the Mbox. And you have some protections there to help you make the right decision. On the high side, the pre's on Mbox have a soft limiter. So if you do hit some clips, you're not going to get that digital distortion. It's going to give you a little bit of a speed, like an off ramp, to protect you from having those overs. And then on the also on the preamp side of things, you've got a pad. If you're out at a concert, or you're somewhere where it's a musician yelling into a microphone, you don't want to overload the preamp. You can reduce that level right on the interface side of things. So you can make those decisions before you even record the sound. And because you have the ability to monitor the inputs as well as what's being recorded, you as the engineer have the power to make sure that you're not getting any of those digital clipping or overs, and that kind of thing. You do want to make the decision at the beginning, because there's only a certain amount of things that you can fix in post. Very much similar to if you take a photograph, if you're not shooting in RAW, your ability to edit in post is a lot less. You might have blown out highlights, or you didn't expose enough, you didn't open up the aperture wide enough, and now your blacks are crushed. And when you try to raise those up, you're introducing more noise. The same thing happens with audio as well. So yeah, I think -10 is a beautiful number. I agree with Devvon on this one, because it's the best of both worlds. With 24-bit converters, there's so much possible for dynamic range. You do want to have a healthy level of signal, but modern audio recording technology and converters really allows for you to have some flexibility. The thing that you don't want to do is be really far over and have crushed audio, or have it so whisper quiet that when you turn it up, you get a bunch of hiss. But I think the biggest piece of this is making sure that you've got a good capture on the front end, and not rely on being able to fix it in the recording.
Let me find out. We got to get Andrew on a photography workshop.
Oh,
All right.
there you go.
I had to point that out, but Devvon.
Well, so much of what we're doing today. I mean, look at all the content that Devvon's involved with. I mean, music and podcast is now has to be tied to picture. So, you know, if you're a musician, you have to understand, you know, video and photography. And if you're a blogger, now you have to have a vlog. You have to have a video component to that as well, which has to go along with your audio. So if you call yourself a photographer, you've got to know audio. If you call yourself a musician, you have to know video. So I think it's really, really important to be, you know, versatile in your knowledge base of just all digital content, because they're so ubiquitous nowadays.
Yeah, we you know, it's funny. I just did a tutorial recently breaking down conversion, audio conversion, and what did I use? I used 2 photos. I used one photo that was super clean, super nice and pristine, and then I used another photo that was super blurry. Same photo, colors were off, and just trying to show people the difference between good conversion and cheaper conversion in audio devices. You know what I mean? As far as that capture and stuff like that. So you're absolutely right. Like photo, audio, video, it's all like encompassing and all in one. And then the one thing I wanted to bring up that Andrew brought up, that I want people to know, having a soft limit function in your interface is reserved for this expensive stuff. Like that's not like a consumer like feature like at all. Like that's only like really, really, I know a lot of just high-end pieces that do that. Like the fact that it has that is so powerful, and it saves you, you know what I mean? Like in situations where things are too hot and stuff like that, and gives you a nice roll off. So that feature in itself, like there's so many things that you can go on about, but that soft limit is also something that is more of a high-end feature that is in it too, that I definitely did fail to mention that as well.
Yeah, that's a great feature. And again, that can be a lifesaver, especially for people like me who have done the recording and then gone back and been like, oh, no, never mind. That's why that workflow question was great. I'm him. I'm the guy that needs to know that. But look, Devvon, Andrew, this was great. We touched on a lot of great things here. Great gear, workflow. You're the perfect example of practice what you preach. I mean, looking at your setup, I'll tell everybody when we first logged on for a test call with Devvon, I'm like, man, I thought I had a nice little setup here. I thought I sounded good. Now every time he talks, I'm like, I'm just gonna shut up. I'm like trying to get closer, further. I got something. I need some presets or something. I need to sound better. But huge thank you, Devvon. This is the time. Look, we dropped the your YouTube, your Help Me Devvon YouTube, but I know you have a lot going on. So plug the heck out of whatever you got to plug, man. Tell us where we can find all your channels, your podcast, everything.
Yeah, so you can just find me on 2 separate platforms. One is Devvon Terrell. That's my artistry. You can find that on YouTube and just everything, Devvon Terrell. And then if you just want to get more into the technical side of my content creation and stuff like that, just type in Help Me Devvon on any platform and you'll get access to all of that stuff. So yeah, Devvon Terrell. I am 2 people, Devvon Terrell and I'm Help Me Devvon. So you can just kind of figure out what you want to tap into and just, yeah, I'm on everything you could imagine, I'm sure. If I'm not on something, please let me know.
I watched your newest, you know, one of your newer videos about the OF. So interesting.
Yeah,
I'm watching, man. Great content. Huge thank you for having you on. I want to get to that point, which I just be like, Google me. Just Google my name. There, everything you need to know is there. But Devvon, great having you on. Andrew, look, it's been a long time making this happen, but it was everything we could have hoped for and imagined, and then some. So huge thank you to the team at Avid for putting this all together, for Devvon for sharing his expertise, advice, and all of his wealth of knowledge with us. So huge thank you to you guys both and the entire teams behind this production, and to all of our viewers out there. You know, we can't do it without you. We do it for you. So huge thank you to everybody who tuned in. But that's all we got for now. Another rendition of the B Nature virtual event space is in the books. Catch y'all next time.